Hello, and welcome back to Sister Sanctuary, where we put Christ at the center of culture, community, and the arts. This podcast is meant to inspire people with intentional, grace filled conversations and encourage others in the faith. So we pray this episode is a blessing for you today. I'm your host, Kyra.
I'm your host, Kenya.
For those of you who really have enjoyed viewing our past episode and just had gleaned so much for our discussion on Christian film, we are so glad today that you are back with us. And we are excited for our part two. So today we are actually going to be tackling multiple film series and discussing how it really impacted us in our lives through to this day. So, really, to start us off with this great conversation, we're going to really be introducing what films most really had an effect on us. So, for me, I want to start us off with talking about Sound of Hope. That is a film that actually came out earlier this year, and it really impacted me so much because I was just very much in a place where I wasn't sure how I felt about helping others, really being able to be an inspiration for youth. But really seeing this film reinvigorated me to think about how I can really affect those around me. So that's one film we're going to get into. I know, Kenya, you have your favorite films
A
that we're going to get
couple.
into as well. So let's start us off there. Yeah, like what's a film that really impacted you? And even if you want to share a little bit of how it did and what really caused you to just think so much about it to this day.
Yeah. Okay. I love this topic, first of all. Obviously, everyone that's watching right now, you're looking at two creatives, film
Yes.
lovers. We love all of the things, and especially talking about and dissecting films. So, for me, as you guys that may have seen in a other episode, or those who just know me, know that my favorite film is The Sandlot. And I think it's always really interesting where you can take films that are not necessarily Christian, like they're not
Mhm.
a pure flicks film, they're
Yeah.
not, made by people that you would know and understand, like, oh, this is an intentionally Christian film. But there are movies that exist that have Christian themes, and I think that those
Mhm.
are really awesome opportunities to like build a bridge and to really connect the dots for people, because not everybody might be inclined to watch a Christian film. I do think there's ways to plant a seed, and then there's of course ways to make really good Christian films just for what they are. So The Sandlot kind of fits in the space of being something that is a classic. Let's be real, like I'll
Yeah.
definitely, have a friendly argument or two with people about it, but undeniable classic in my book. There are some themes that I think do carry over very much into the Christian space. Much of it is really about courage and what it means to face a fear. So you have this group of boys, just very briefly on the plot, that are convinced that there's this monstrous child eating dog in their neighborhood. So when a ball goes over the fence into that dog's yard, their world is basically over, right? Unless, of course, they can recover this ball. And so it requires them to work together, to collaborate, to figure out what skills they best can, use from within their group of, friends. Some of them are like very book smart. Some of them are just like think
Yeah.
outside of the box, like very, very rambunctious, and some of them are strategic. So it's like, how do we put our superpowers, so to speak, together to pull this off, to get this ball back? And in bravery, which I'll get to in a moment, even as you think about how they are maneuvering themselves, I think there's some things you can extrapolate. Like, this is not meant to be like, oh, it's a side by side complete
Yes.
comparison to the Bible. None of these stories are going to obviously hold weight to the actual biblical truth. But think about the parallels with that, right? I think within the body of Christ, there are so many of us. We have so many denominations, even. There's a lot of different things going on in the body of Christ. But even within our local church, like there are different roles that people hold. You have, you have elders, you have the pastors, youth pastors, you have those that are working with children's ministry, of course, the congregation, deaconesses, etc. All of them have their own different skills and things that they are bringing to the table, their own contributions, which are all valid and very necessary. And they're having to work together for a common goal, which, of course, is
Yeah.
to serve God, which is to promote the gospel, all of these things, right? And so I'm drawing a parallel between the group of boys and their
Yeah.
skills and how they were pulling off a goal, and that there's ways that we can look at that within the body of Christ, but more specifically to the story and the content of the story of the Sandlot. Bravery and courage,
Mm,
those are such big things. Like, obviously fear is not of God, right? So we have to
yeah.
be reminded in this chaotic world that we live in that although the world is crazy, there's plenty that we could say, oh, that makes me nervous, that makes me anxious. We're living in a very, very tumultuous year, obviously, for many, many different reasons. And I think where we can be really confident is that we serve a God that's for us, that gives us favor amongst men, amongst situations. And so when this, character Betty the Jet Rodriguez,
Mhm.
is standing up to the beast, which is what they've named this monstrous dog, he's obviously using courage. He's brave in the sense that he's willing finally to face up to the fear. And then, spoiler alert, obviously there's gonna be a lot of spoilers in this episode.
Yeah.
But we'll let you know now. But fortunately they are not only able to retrieve the ball, which is pretty mangled and
Mhm.
nasty at this point. But they retrieve it, but they also discover two things, many things, but I'll talk about two. One, there was this whole other hidden like treasure trove of
Mhm.
baseballs that were hidden
Mhm.
back there that no other kid had worked up the courage and the bravery to actually go over there and see for themselves, facing up to this fear and being able to retrieve these balls. So they had this treasure trove of endless baseballs to play with. And also the biggest thing and biggest impactful thing for me as a viewer, they realized that what they were afraid of was actually not worth being afraid of at all. Like,
Mm.
it
Mhm.
was a dog that was pretty fierce. So we've all seen those dogs that
Yeah.
are rough or whatever, like, ooh, like, can it bite me? Blah, blah, blah. What we know. But this dog, I mean, really, the dog was chasing after him because that's what dogs do. Like, it was a sweet dog, like, when all push came to shove, whatever, they're petting it, all these things. So they realized what they were really afraid of was not this big, monstrous thing, it was just a dog. And how many times in life do we really put things almost on a pedestal when we're afraid of them without even realizing it? Like, oh, like, I'm so afraid I could never apply for that job. I could
Mm.
never
Mhm.
hold the standard to be true in relationships. I could never speak in front of a bunch of people, like, and then maybe when you're
Mhm.
able to do it or vocalize those things, speak in front of people, like, step outside of your comfort zone and be willing to take a shot. Afterwards, I don't know
Yeah.
about you, but there's been times where I've faced up to something and been like, actually, that wasn't that hard at all. And although it is not a Christian film, I think there are a lot of
Yeah.
messages and lessons like that that are just impactful. Like, facing up to fear is important, and God calls us to do it every day, and we're not supposed to be surrendering to fear in any means. So, with all of that said, have you seen The Sandlot? Is that what you got from it? Is it, is this stuff I forgot
Yes.
about? Because there's so many gems in that film. So many.
It's a lot of gems. I actually remember seeing The Sandlot. I was about maybe 8 or 9, to be completely honest with you. So that was a while ago. But I do remember so much of, I think one thing I really got along with, like you said, bravery. I got
Yeah.
the feeling of actually, having like a long suffering, adopting long
Mm.
suffering in my life. Now at 8, I'm gonna tell you, long suffering may have meant like
Not at
waiting,
8.
extra long to, in a line, or
The
long
wise
suffering to
8-year-old
maybe,
girl.
a long suffering probably, at 8, I think for me was just more so like, how long do I have to, wait to go outside or whatever. But to be honest with you, I think that those were kind of like the first few nuggets that really kind
Right.
of helped to grow in me opportunities where, no, Kyra, like life is not, a fairy tale. Like you don't wake up every day and everything is great. Like some
Mm-hmm.
days aren't. Sometimes you do have to stand up for yourself and for what is right. You have to
Yeah.
kind of like adopt, how are you going to get through things now, and not, about like, and you have to kind of change up the plan. Like everything is not going to be, how you initially thought it was going to turn out. And so I feel like to be honest with you, I feel like a couple of movies, I think that was I'm pretty sure I saw it on Disney when I initially saw it, but
Disney has
there's
the
like,
hits.
yeah, those were the days where, not the days, but yes, the days where it's like they really had, a meaning to those films and things of that nature in terms of those jewels, I know, to me. And I will guess like I'll take it a step further as well. And I'm going to talk about as well, Sound of Hope, which is a movie that just came out
Yes.
this year. This actually connects a little bit with a Sandlot, just a tiny bit,
Ooh.
because when you brought up the bravery as like a main point about this particular film, The Sandlot, it made me think so much about the bravery within Sound of Hope. And the reason
Wow.
being, for those of you guys who don't know, but Sound of Hope is basically an adoption story. And it's not any adoption story that we've seen like on Lifetime or, by other film agencies and things of
Mm-hmm.
that nature. It's an adoption story that's really focused on a family in the rural South, who actually are, Christians. They practice the faith and things of that nature, but they've never really had the chance to live it out outside of the church until this point. And so what happens in the film is they are actually approached with the opportunity to adopt kids from that come from like a lot of troubled homes. Some have had a lot of trauma and things of that nature. And what's crazy about it is like at first, and for a lot of people, these kids were the kids, I hate to say it, but the kids that a lot of people did not want, because they didn't want to
Mm.
have to deal with a 5-year-old who was so scared of little things, or a 10-year-old who maybe, suffered from food deprivation. They wanted, the
Wow.
cute kid, the kid that like was only 3 months old, the kid that was very smart but just needed a second chance. Like, but I think what this film really did was, show a family who was like, hey, I'm willing to take on the kid that nobody wants, because they still need love too. Like they still need hope
Yeah.
as well. And there's one character even in the story that I would say they actually show her throughout her life after she came to live with the family and really developed as a young woman. And I will say that she was one of the ones in that film where I was like, yeah, if they gave her back, I would understand, not that it was
Ooh.
right, but like I would understand
Wow.
from her
She was getting into
behavior.
trouble?
Yes, a lot of
Okay.
trouble, which you guys will see if you watch the film. Like she's one of the ones where at the end of the film, I was so glad that they showed that she did well, but at the beginning, I was so worried about. And so it's just so
Mm.
crazy how it's kind of like their faith, which we can really take it back to Christ, with their faith and their long suffering, like we kind of saw in the Sandlot, but different type of storyline, helped them to really change a lot of children's lives. And I think
Yeah.
just with the bravery aspect of the entire film was their just willingness to step in where other people were afraid to. And so it really just I think number one, just like you said, Kenya, like changed me as well, because it made me, number one, want to adopt, but also want to really make a
Wow.
difference in the lives of people. That it's not all about this like cookie cutter, like, okay, I'm gonna go and feed the 100 people or whatever, but it's really like, hey, are you willing to disciple someone and walk through life with them? And that's really what
Yeah.
these family actually did. And it was another way of discipling, but
Right.
it's what they actually did. So I'm with you. I'm
Wow.
with you on that one.
That's
Yeah. Yeah.
powerful. And I know discipleship is a topic that we want to dig into
Yeah.
more as well.
Yeah.
Wow. I want to know more about the adoption piece because you'd mentioned that
Yeah.
briefly about that even kind of expanding your own horizons or things that you're
Yeah.
thinking about for the future and whatever you want to
Mhm.
talk about, you know.
Yeah.
Is it more so you're inspired by the
Mhm.
generosity that this family had and the courage that they had?
Yes.
And you
Yes.
model that, or it's like an embrace of like the fact that wherever you meet people it might not be in their most perfect state, like none of
Yeah.
us are perfect, like
Yeah.
how do we hold space for those of us that
Yeah.
are figuring it out, or maybe just life has done a number and we're trying to kind of just do the best that we can. So anything you want to add on that? I don't want to skip over that, like.
No, so I will say this. I had honestly wanted to adopt a couple of years ago, not like immediately right now, but like it's something in the future. But I think this film really propelled me to think differently about how we reach youth and how
Mm,
we really impact their lives. I
yeah.
think one point that you made that was extremely important was the reality of meeting someone where they are. Um,
Mm,
if you don't see another film
hard.
concerning
Can be hard.
meeting someone where they are and changing their lives, see Sound of
Hmm.
Hope, because that is exactly what it is. I mean,
The Forge had
literally,
that too. Just a brief
yes,
callback
and
to
the
part
Forge.
one. Meeting people where they're at.
The
Leaving people
Forge
better than
had
you
that
found
as
them.
well.
Yes.
Just be literally like the first or second scene was a foster care worker actually going to the home where a youth was staying and being abused. Right, like that's meeting someone where they are. Like if you have not heard of anything else, and so I
Yeah.
think the reality of the situation is what resonated so much for me was it brought it home. Like it is not something, it's not, a thing where you have to drive 50 miles away to, see someone that is really, really in need. Like you don't know what someone is actually going through. You don't know when you see that child that's sitting on the bus by themselves, or you go to a museum and you see someone, it's like, okay, they've been there for hours, but do they have somewhere to go home? Like you don't know what these people have been through. So it just really resonated with me so much, and it made me want to make a difference. I hope it makes others want to make a difference too. So this is a light,
Yes.
promotion here. If you haven't seen the film Sound of Hope, or if you want to give to the option, give to opportunities where more children can be adopted, please do so. But I really think that had so much of an impact on my life. And I think for someone who grew up, more transparent in, a family and things of that nature, seeing something even on television, on in film, that really humbled me in a sense where it's like, no, you think you would have done this in this situation, but would you? Right? Like you think you would have turned out this way because of X, Y, and Z, but really you had a village that was help propelling you to get you to where God wanted you to be. Some of these
Wow.
kids are
Yeah.
are put on this earth and they don't have that at all.
Mm,
This
very
is why I
true.
want everyone to go see The Sound of Hope. But
Check out
yes,
all these
yes,
movies. Check
yes,
out Sound of
yes,
Hope. If you haven't seen The
yes,
Sandlot yet,
yes. Please go
please do
see that.
yourself a favor. Hello. So that's really good. And you talked about it very briefly.
Mhm.
Although this was a film, of course, like what we watch on TV growing up
Yeah,
influences us and shapes what we view, maybe even, yeah, what our concepts of norms
yeah,
are. And challenging some of those for the better, of
yeah,
course, is obviously a Christ-centered podcast. I want to talk briefly on my favorite TV series. I mean, you'll have to let me know if I'm being brief or not. I could talk about this one for a while, just like the
yes,
Sandlot,
please.
but reel me in. But good times, yes. We've all
Oh
probably
yeah,
heard of it, at least the theme song. Whether people have actually watched an episode, which I encourage, streaming on Peacock, which is awesome. We have like a VHS tape of like I think one of the seasons or whatnot. I don't really know where it is, or if we have both of them. It's like one of those two for specials or whatever, where you have both of them on there, two tape thing, whatever. But this, the show has always stuck with me. I would grow up with us playing it on TV1 in my
Mhm.
family room. And I think not necessarily always was watching it from the jump, but as I got a little bit older, would linger a little bit longer and longer and fell in love with the characters and the story. It's basically about a family that's growing up in Chicago and they are navigating the highs and lows of living in the projects. A father that is working and trying to make ends meet, and a mother that is very faith driven. I would say that she's a Christian character in terms of, you know, professing the faith. Like there's an episode called Black Jesus, which is I think one of their first episodes actually. Actually, it definitely is. I'm definitely downplaying how much of a Good Time super fan I am. But that episode is really, really interesting in and of itself. Maybe that's a sidebar at some point. But in all, here's a black family that is sticking together through hard times,
Mhm.
that really they are a light to their community. They live in this building with a lot of different characters and neighbors, from Bookman to Walona to later, Penny, played by Janet Jackson, one of my favorite portrayals like ever, like child actor Hall of Fame for sure.
Yeah.
Um, but there's so many episodes. I think in the 80s sitcom of it all, you had a very, very clear formulaic, almost like obviously beginning, middle, and end, but there was some sort of message, usually of hope, usually of uplift, that was baked in
Mhm.
there. And I think Good Times was really, really great at it. No, the times were never good, but them being together as a family unit, that was the good part, is that no matter what was going on, they had each other. They did the best that they could. I have a lot of people, even like close to me, that have different opinions on the show, in terms of wanting to see them obviously make it out of their situation, like in a real way, like maybe a whole season of them like
Mhm.
moving somewhere else or whatever. But I just take away the family values in terms of, commitment, hard work, being able to have a sense of humor and being able to laugh even in the midst of chaos. And we are very good at that, just the black community in general.
Yeah.
It takes you back to a time where the black church was more central to the black community,
Mhm.
because I'd be curious to know your thoughts on it, Kyra. But as of today, I don't know that we could really say the church is the staple institution of the black community in the way that it was perhaps during the civil rights movement and other
Oh
movements
yeah.
previously. I think of our generation also, like we're seeing a lot of like mass exodus from church and things like
Yeah.
that. And so the kids, the Evans family kids, they weren't necessarily, you really heard the most like of faith and like Christian aspects from Florida, the mother, right?
Mhm.
But then, bringing it to just what the conversations were in their house, like I just feel like it's one of those ones where you could say in a lot of also like just black narratives, like we have a spirituality about us, like Christian in much in
Mhm.
culture. It's very different what that looks like authentically people's
Yeah.
relationships, obviously. But I just appreciate that you had that element there, and it seemed very, very just in a baked in a goal of hope. It was always, hope focused, hope centered, uplift focused, some humor to it. So that's a show that's really, really stuck with me. It's like one of my comfort shows. If I don't know what to watch, I'll probably wind up watching that or Shark Tank, to be honest, or like a series I've already seen. So have you seen Good Times? Do you have episodes you remember? They got deep on some episodes too. Penny had a whole storyline with abuse, unfortunately. Like there was a lot of things going on that I do think, and I applaud them for tackling at the time that it was airing as well. So let's throw it to Kyra, see what's going on her.
Yes.
What's your
So
thoughts on Good Times?
I'm good. Full transparency here. The first
Yeah.
time I actually have I saw Good Times. I think I was actually watching the commercial for like it came up as like the next episode when I was watching like another episode, and I was like, okay, let me actually see what what's going on there, whatever the case may
Yeah.
be. I think one thing is this: I have not seen like the entire like all of the seasons of Good Times or whatever the case may be, but I will say that something that really stuck out to me was just the realism in that episode. Like, I don't know
Black
why, but
Jesus?
I think, well, not that, but yes, but also like the realism in those episodes and like of Good
Uh-huh.
Times, not just in that one, but of Good Times, because I think like even just looking at the way that their like house, like the layout of their house and everything, like what they were
Uh,
actually going through, their work and stuff. I'll be honest with you, it made me think a lot about a lot of my family members who were growing up within during that time, and even my grandparents who grew up, way before Good Times, was actually filmed. But there's some aspects of like how they really were able to laugh to keep from crying in situations where
mm,
it was a lot more
yes.
difficult. And so I think what really stands out to me so much was just we talk about, like having that bravery, having that zeal and things of that nature. And it's seen vividly in Good Times. It's seen how, you know, the father and mother kind of still continue to keep their family together, continue to keep some semblance of, hey, we're going to make it through, right? Like, where you don't have a lot, but that doesn't mean that's not an excuse for us to write off the future that we want for our children, right? And
Yeah.
so I think that they
So
really
good.
were trying to make a difference, you know, in their kids' lives. And I think also it just reminds me so much of even today. Like, I know, to be honest with you, there's a lot of us, as African Americans who have had the luxury of like, hey, we're in this middle class, world
Yep.
arena now where not many of us were like that 30 and 40 years ago. We were not in the
Talk
middle
about
class,
it.
a lot of us. And so, but, within that, we still have to kind of remember those family values. Like, we're not, I think one
Yes.
thing that I hope that please watch Good Times, number one. But number two, one
Yes.
thing that I
Please
really
watch it.
hope, that we get out of this series and even other series as well that really, depict Black families in a more positive light in terms of the role that they are playing in society, is that we remember, as Black people, that we do have a responsibility for uplifting each other, for caring for each other, for really making sure that we educate each other, and understanding that whatever circumstances we're living in, that even though that's our today, it doesn't have to be our tomorrow. And
Amen
so
to
I think
that.
that, this show encourages me, just, into knowing that, like, hey, we can make it. Like, I mean, I don't want to, get too far into the weeds here because I
No, this
will
is good,
probably start
girl.
crying, but
You all right
I'm
by
reminded on so many people that have come before me that, it was not, they had much less and they did so much more with what they had, so yeah, yeah,
So basically, the state of the Black community conversation is next.
yeah,
After this, because you broke it down to a science. I love that. I think we are a resilient people, and there's so much that we have achieved, and there's more. There's more on the
yeah,
horizon. I don't think that we should ever feel like we operate with a glass ceiling at all. So
yeah,
beautifully, beautifully said. I want to hear about the Joy Luck Club because I
yes,
know it is one of your absolute favorites
yes,
and also one
yes.
that inspires you and impacts you. So, can you tell us a little bit about what it's about and also ways that it has resonated with you and maybe even like gems that might be parallels to Christianity
Yes.
and scripture, maybe even.
Yes, yes. I'm on this 90s movie kick. And so I was thinking to myself, like, okay, let's just see, what I can really watch, what's actually going to be engaging. So this film, number one, was more so based on realism, realistic events, and things of that nature. But it really detailed the lives of four um, women. But it took you back four generations where they actually were. This is before they even migrated to the U.S. and they were actually dealing with sexism, racism, the patriarchal system that existed
Mm-hmm.
arguably may still exist in China to this day, where they actually had to navigate all that to even get to the United States. And then kind of really assimilating into the United States was hard for them because it was a lot of issues that they had to face. Still sexism. Now it's corporate America. It's really living in not so great neighborhoods, but trying to make the best life for yourself and for your child. And so it really took you back to four
Mm-hmm.
generations. And I think one thing that I got from that film, which I really can see it, in good times as well, but just like resilience in a
Come on,
sense. I
parallels.
think that the parallel, as you said, great, their parallel there is like a lot of these situations that you saw in the film, you would think like, okay, I would be ready to quit on life after that. I'm done. I'm moving away. I can't do this anymore, whatever. But their resiliency, even just like in the midst of abuse or mistreatment,
Mm,
like it really made you feel like, whoa, like God's giving me the strength to fight. Like I might
amen.
start off in a situation where I'm not pleased with, or that may be a bad situation for me, but that doesn't mean it has to end that way. And so it was just very touching. I think that there were some aspects of the film, especially, when they started to touch on, the corporate America scene and how like there's a lot of like patriarchal aspects of that, a lot of, okay, you're not, a cisgender white male. So
Mm,
this is kind of the treatment that you might receive. I think that it really did touch me a bit on there because I'll be honest with you, like I have had some disheartening experiences in the workplace and things of that nature, but I've tried to not let that, dictate what my career will look like in the future.
and
And
you're better
so
than
I
me
think,
because the things this girl has experienced, I'm gonna nip it in
yeah,
the bud. I'm gonna keep it cute. You're really good at keeping it cute, Kyra, but it's been some trite. Yeah.
yeah,
Just want shout out to
yeah.
you. Shout out to you. And I'm grateful that you have this outlook even through the things that you've experienced with that too. So all right. I want to toss it back. I
Yeah.
just had to say that. I had to say that.
No, I appreciate it because, I think the reality of it is just to your point exactly. And what this film really did exactly was validate minority women and the struggles we do face in this country. And I
Right.
think what I really got from this film is the reality of, hey, I'm not alone. Like, I'm not the only one dealing with this. Kenya, me, and you probably deal with the same,
Yeah.
certain dynamics sometimes professionally and everything. But it validated that, but it let us know like, hey, you can grow through this and you can triumph through any situation. And so it was
Amen.
really very
Hey
powerful.
girl, this
Yeah.
is dope.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting here like, why haven't I watched this yet? I hope everyone at home is feeling that way too, or wherever you're watching from. And I'm really, really grateful for this part two. I love a part two. Maybe there's more part
Yeah.
twos. Maybe there's part threes and fours to be had. Who knows? We absolutely love this. Obviously, the podcast is meant to put Christ at the center of culture, community, and the
Mhm.
arts. So this was our arts conversation part two.
Yes.
And we, as always, are so thankful to you all for tuning in and joining us on this conversation. Part two of the state of Christian entertainment and film. So we appreciate your support. We want to make sure that that continues. So in the comments, drop what your favorite movie or show is. If it has a parallel to Christian themes and values, we want to hear about that too. It's all about connecting the dots and just making sure that we have the opportunity to amplify Christ. And that goes also for what we watch and what we indulge in. So until we're able to sift through those comments and see what you guys are thinking, we just want to say that we appreciate you. We would love for you to continue to support us also on social media, our Instagram page, wherever you can find us. Reach out, support, and we hope that this episode brought some love, light, and laughter into your day. So until next time, I'm your host, Kenya.
And I'm your host, Kyra.
And this has been Sister Sanctuary.
Yes.
Bye.